If you made a list of the things that you want to know about Jesus that we just don't have any access to, besides some of the obvious things, we left-handed or right-handed, and how many Super Bowls did the Patriots win because of cheating, I think one of the things that most people would really like to know is, what was his childhood like? What was Jesus as a kid? I mean, how does that work? The balance between being 100% God and 100% man, what was he like? Could he speak Mandarin? Luckily for us, his brother Thomas told us. There is what's called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. And I don't know why it's called infancy, because it's really about his childhood. And it fills in the gap between ages 5 and 12, which is where in Luke we find him hanging out in the temple. And this very, very strange document, this apocryphal gospel, is one of the most wonderful, bizarre things that you'll ever read. And the portrayal that it gives of Jesus at this time is fascinating, because Jesus comes across really as a jerk in so many ways. And at the same time, this was an extremely popular early gospel. And one of the ways that you know that things are popular is, does it still survive? And this survived all the way down to today. It wasn't something that was dug up like a lot of other things. And it was translated into multiple languages. So it was obviously a very popular thing. So what does it tell us about Jesus as a kid? Well, it starts at the age 5. And Jesus is by the river, and he's making little pools of water, and he molds out of the clay and the water 12 sparrows. And it goes on. I'm going to just read a little bit of it because it's wonderful. It was the Sabbath when he did this thing. But there were also many other children playing with him. Then a certain Jew saw Jesus was what he was doing and playing on the Sabbath. Immediately he departed and reported to Jesus' father, Joseph. Look, your child is in the stream, and he took clay and formed 12 birds and profaned the Sabbath. And Joseph went to the area. When he saw him, he shouted, "Why are you doing these things not permitted on the Sabbath?" Jesus, however, clapped his hands and shouted to the sparrows, "Depart, fly and remember me now that you are alive." And the sparrows departed, shrieking. Okay, so that's just wonderful. Jesus is making little sparrows. He gets in trouble because you shouldn't be doing this on the Sabbath. Joseph comes over after being alerted. He says, "Jesus, what are you doing?" And what sparrows? They've flown away. Okay, innocent enough. But then things turn a little bit more sinister. The son of Annas, the scribe, comes over and he messes up Jesus' pools of water, and he spreads them all out with a stick and destroys Jesus' playing area. And Jesus does not react, well, exactly how you would expect Jesus, the wonderful Son of God, to react. He instead yells at the kid, quote, "You godless, brainless moron, what did the ponds and waters do to you? Watch this now. You are going to dry up like a tree, and you will never produce leaves or roots or fruit." And immediately the child withered up completely. Ouch, that's a little harsh. As you can imagine, the kids' parents were not exactly thrilled with this. They go to Joseph and go, "What's up with your kid?" And Joseph goes, "Yeah, I know. And it keeps going, and it keeps getting worse from there. Jesus keeps offing people who ever make him mad. He's walking down the street. A kid bumps him on the shoulder. Jesus turns and says, "You shall walk no more," and the kid falls over dead. And that's it for that kid. Joseph starts to think, okay, maybe if you get some proper education, this could help. And a teacher comes in and goes, "I can straighten these things out, not a problem." And teachers with an ego, not that you probably have ever met one, teachers with an ego when teaching the Son of God doesn't go very well. And Jesus keeps offing the teachers. And it gets worse and worse till finally Jesus is playing on a roof with another kid. The kid falls off. Jesus doesn't push him, but everybody comes around, sees the dead kid, and immediately assume, based on past behavior, that Jesus pushed him off the roof or had something to do with his death. Well, Jesus is, incensed at this assumption. Where would it ever come from? And he jumps and he floats off the roof down to the ground, and he yells at the dead kid, and he says, "Zacharias, wake up. Did I push you off the roof?" And Zacharias, now being back and alive, says, "No, Lord, you are the one who raised me." And in this, there's a final shift that seems to happen where now all of a sudden Jesus starts to be using his miraculous power for good instead of just offing people who are questioning him. And so, for example, he's helping out with Joseph, who's a carpenter. Joseph's cutting a board. He cuts it too short. He didn't measure twice, cut once. And he's like, "Oh, now I'm never going to be able to make this bed." And Jesus comes over. He stretches out the short piece of wood to the correct dimensions. And Joseph is able to continue on with the thing, with his bed. Eventually, after doing a couple other nice things for a change, he is found in the temple, and that's where the gospel ends, and Luke kind of carries on with the story. So what are you to make of this? It was popular. People liked this book. But what was it saying about Jesus? I think we all, if we tried to imagine what he would be like, would think of different ways of portraying him, but offing other little kids for bumping him is not probably what we would necessarily associate with a boy Jesus. I don't have any answers for this one. It's just such an odd book. The one takeaway that I will offer you is it is very intent on two things. One is that balance of power between God, 100% God, 100% human. And different times and cultures have leaned one way or the other in terms of trying to understand Jesus. Sometimes he's extremely human in times when people are suffering, and during the plague, depictions of Jesus as human and really dying on the cross tend to hold sway. At other times, he's much more divine. This is a case in the early 2nd century, when we think this was written, of when it was a very heavy leaning to the divine. The other takeaway is the power of Jesus' word in this. That is, whenever he does something, it is he speaks, and with a spoken word, that is when something happens. Well, I'm unfortunately going to leave it for you guys there, because there's not really much else to tell you about the gospel. You should go and read it. You should find it and read it sometime. It's marvelously entertaining in its own way. But I'm going to leave that for you guys for next time. Next time what we'll do is we'll get back more into the actual gospels that we do have that have made it into the canon. And with that, we will ask the question, which probably a lot of people have also asked: why are there 4 of them? We'll try to answer that next time. In the meanwhile, take care. Take care of each other. Be your sister's keeper. Cheers, guys.